Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Cable is clean and moving free. Let's get at her. I hope everybody is doing good. Weather's been great out here on the prairies. We've been lucky. It's been an awesome fall. But every day, I'm still in here messing around with my car. I just love it. So last night, I ended up going through and cleaning up the shift cable. Now, this does not come apart as much as the speedometer cable. Now, I lost some video. I lost audio, actually, on everything that I did on the last one. So I'm missing a bunch of it, but it is what it is, unfortunately. I'm getting rid of that microphone for now until I figure out what's going on. But we are definitely back on it. So I went through, I cleaned up my shifting cable. It's moving smooth. I ran brake clean through it, and then I ran my air compressor through it, then brake clean again until it came out nice and clean. And then use the compressor to make sure it's nice and dry, no dust or anything in there. Run the cable back and forth a million times, spun it, blow air through it again, make sure the dust is gone. Then I took it out and I just used a little fluid film and ran it down in here until it dripped out the other side, made sure everything moved good, cleaned it up a little bit. It is done. It's now moving nice and smooth. So I had a new O-ring. It came in that transmission kit as well too, right there. Got the new O-ring on it. The adjuster is moving smooth. And that is my next big step, is to try to get this thing adjusted properly so we can get the push button shift to work correctly. Now, for the age of this car, this is, to me, this is an engineering marvel. Whoever come up with this idea and this system in here. It took me forever. Back last year, when I cleaned this up, I took these push rods apart and these plates, cleaned all the springs up, all the throws, to make sure that they were actually locking into position when the switch was pushed. That was the hardest thing, to get them to fall into the little locks. As they go, there's locks here that are grabbing the whole time, that are sliding in and out, the safety locks. Then, of course, the ones that come up and they push. This is for your rear lights. So when you put it in reverse, connects the circuit, makes your rear lights come on, your backup lights, and getting it so that everything engages with the park brake as well too. Now, when I did this, it was quite a mess, and it was seized. I could push it into neutral, but when I tried to push any other gear, all of them would try to go at the same time. So it took quite a bit of work. You can see how all the plates there move individually. Well, they're just seized all together and they're just moving as one. So we got it cleaned up. The light bulb that illuminates this still works. It's still good, and it works fine. And then, yeah, the reverse light for when you put it in reverse and your backup lights go on, it still works. It works good too. So I kept them. And then everything else in here is original. One spring on the bottom here I did replace. It's not really the right spring, but it seems to hold pretty good. And it's my first gear one, so if it popped out of first and went to neutral, not a big deal. But it seems to work all right. There is one thing I'm missing, though, is the park lever drops. There is one spring that goes here. It's got a long arm, a coil that kind of goes right around where this bolt is, and then back in here. And that holds it in the up position so it doesn't fall down when it's not in gear. So the way it is right now, as soon as you push neutral, it automatically drops in the park, which is no good. Maybe you had to roll the car or tow it or something like that. So it keeps it up and it just cams over and then it pops and then allows it to stay down. So that's one thing I can get. $30 for that little tiny spring. It is available though. Now, getting this thing to work properly was quite a chore, and actually understanding how it works as well too. Yeah, you push a button, it goes into gear. But what's going on in here? There's all kinds of slides, and each slide is, I guess we call it, semi-connected to the other, which means depending on where your park lever is and your other gear lever is where the catches are. They're little tiny I don't know what you call. They're little dogs that are all along the edge. So when the lever is up, so you're out of park, and you go into drive. Drive gear selected, which releases the dog for the neutral. So if it's in neutral, it releases the dog and neutral snaps back. And the little springs in here you see, all these little springs that are in tension, they push it back. And the same thing is now I need to go into reverse. It's the same thing. Reverse is engaged, so you were in drive, you're now in reverse. Drive pops out. The reverse one is now pressed, and you see it protruding through the back, and that spring is compressed and holding tension on it. And so forth and so forth with first, second, drive, reverse. They're all the same. Now, there's a neutral. So you push the neutral. The car is in neutral, of course. It rolls. So you know what? You got to tow it, you got to push it, battery's dead, run out of gas, whatever. But if you're driving and you get home for the night, there's no need to just put this thing in neutral and then set your park brake. So you get home, you're driving, pulling this lever down. If you watch, you can see the neutral start to move. It automatically goes into neutral, disengages the drive, and now your car is in park in your driveway. No worries. No worries of breaking the pin out of the transmission, which was a problem with some of the different models. This one, it definitely doesn't have as much of an issue. Now, if you were rolling and you engage that, you got some big problems. In the tail of that transmission, if you remember seeing that spragged gear that the lock goes into, if you snap that off, that's a pain in the butt to get in there to fix that. But hopefully, this is all working now. Hopefully I got the right amount of throw on this. Hopefully they're in the right spot. This little lever here, this is actually the one here that the rod hooks to. Hopefully we can get it working again. So here we are back over the transmission. And this right here is where the shifting cable goes. Now inside here is the little connector that the end of the cable hooks to. Now, when I put the transmission together, I put this in the neutral. And I pulled on the lever. I know where the gears are. I know which way this moves. So with it right now, it is in neutral. And I know that if I pull all the way out, that's drive. You hear 3 clicks. So that's drive, that'd be second, that's first. There's neutral, there's reverse. That's where it's at. That's how you know where it's at. But say you took this off or you broke a cable, you have no idea where you're at in the range, or you don't know which way it goes. Well, it has the neutral safety switch, just like on any vehicle. So all you gotta do is you grab your meter, get it to continuity, so you know it's beeping. Touch it to the end of your safety switch, put it on to a bolt in the transmission. See, we got nothing. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna say, okay, well, maybe it's in reverse. We'll push it all the way in. Maybe that's going the other way. Then we can check it again. Sorry, I just bumped the side of the transmission. But there's nothing. So now we've got a starting point. We grab a hold of it. Let's bring it out 1. Maybe we're in reverse here, so we only need to go 1 click. So 1 click would make that neutral. And there we are. We found neutral. So if it was going the other way, and it was all the way out, and you thought, well, maybe I'm in reverse here. We'll do 1 click. We'll check it. No. So now we know we're on the top end of the transmission, that we're in our gears. So we go all the way down to reverse. 1 click. That should put us in neutral, which we are. Now we know where to start when we connect our cable. All right, we are ready to go and adjust the cable for the push button shift. So to get started, I'm down here on my shift assembly. We're down in the park position, in neutral, and we have the rod attached, or the cable attached. Don't worry about these long screws. When I took those apart, the ones that came out, you see all the rust here, well, they just were chewed to pieces. There was nothing left to them, so I have to get a couple machine screws. But down here, we're in neutral. The cable's where it should be for neutral. So now what we got to do is we got to find the actual neutral position for that adjuster down at the bottom. Now, the wires you see I have connected here are just my multimeter down there to check for continuity, and hooked up to my neutral safety switch. So of course we got one end right on the switch. The other end's on the cable here that just ends up going into the back of the transmission. So it's making good ground, and that'll work there as well. So what I need to do is I need to set this to the neutral position, but I gotta make sure it's not a false neutral. I don't want, there is a spot when you're adjusting this where it starts to push on the button and you can go before it to neutral and a little bit past and still make a connection, but really the transmission might not be fully engaged, it's kind of in between gears. So I want to make sure that I'm at that, center neutral. So now that I got everything set up, the pin has been pushed in, I pull this back out and I can shift it by moving the cable, but that's not doing anything to the box. That's just a cable jack that's sliding back and forth. So we're going to turn the multimeter on, the continuity. We're going to start pushing this in. We'll start at the very end. Oh, there we go. Start going into the gears. Fine and neutral. Oh, there we are there. So now I'm going to go past it into reverse. Then back into neutral. Then back into first gear. Now, so I'm just going back and forth. I can feel the positive lock, the little indent that's in there. So we're going to go back into reverse. I'm going to come out into the neutral. I've got play on my cable. I can feel that I'm at dead center. Now I'm going to just turn my wheel. And a little set screw goes in here. Now we want to make sure that we're not putting tension on it. So I'm just up snug to the transmission. Going to push in on it, make sure there's no problem that it's going to push out. I can see that it's flush, and I'm lined up with the screw hole. So everything should be good. All right. So we are in neutral. Oh, I bumped my cable. We are in neutral. So if we go in the drive, there we go. Neutral safety switch is disengaged. We're cruising down the road. Everything is good. We put it back in the neutral. Transmission is in neutral position. In the reverse. Back to neutral. We're driving. We're done driving. We're going to park. Put the park brake on. It should pop it in the neutral as well. And there we are. We have our push button shift for the 727. Back in operating order. Now you probably noticed another cable hanging at the back here, and I did mention it. This is a speedometer cable. I did have a video on this. It does all come apart, and actually the internal parts, the internal wire comes out of this as well. And I cleaned it all up and got it working, cleaned off the gear. But the video I had, I lost audio again, and I finally figured out that it's just the microphones that are driving me nuts. So you know what? It was a lot of talking to kind of explain what's going on, so I just left it out. But literally, clean the cable. All it does is just plug back in, and of course, comes all the way to the front. And it's turning good. I can turn the tail shaft, and it turns that very easily. Now, another thing I got coming as well. Got a hose that I'm making at my work. The fittings here for the transmission. These are where your lines go up to your cooler. They make a loop to the cooler and back. While I run this inside the shop here, I'm just gonna jump these one to the other. I'm not worried about heat inside the transmission. It won't be any real load on it or anything, so I don't have to worry about that. This is a -5 JIC fitting, so we'll just put a straight fitting here, straight on this side, and loop the line around. It just clears my kickdown. Now the kickdown won't be really running in here, but I do want to make sure it's going to clear just so I can get it hooked up and also get it so it's operational with the carburetor once I hook all that linkage up. Alrighty. So our next step on the transmission, close up some of the holes, is the park brake mechanism. Now I've taken this apart. Only took a few minutes, but it was dirty. It was grimy in there. this little, I guess a little kind of like a bowl, all that black crud, it was extra thick. It was almost a 1/4 inch thick and deep inside this thing. So we got it all cleaned out with brake clean. I, of course, run my file across it, cleaned it up, and I threw it in the blaster. Just quick, gave it a quick little dusting. It was just the corrosion on this thing. This was actually in the ground. Like the back end of this transmission was in the ground where it was sitting. So quick little blast, the blaster, cleaned it up, threw on some silver paint, put it in front of the wood stove to get a nice good powder bake on it. But it is now clean and ready to go together. All our components look good, look like they're in good shape. The spring here though, it's got one little, let's see if you can see it here. See, not quite straight, got one little kink in it. I think I bent that when I was pulling it out, but I think it's gonna be okay. Should be fine. I did find it online, $19.99 if I do need one, but I think it'll be good. So now that we got this apart and cleaned, we're gonna lube it up a little bit. I'm gonna put everything back together. Everything should be fine. And I gotta figure out how this fits on the bottom of the transmission. I'm not 100% sure. Not really sure how it come off because I couldn't see what was going on when I did it. And I just pulled it down thinking that it was just hanging on there. And it was not. It was locked in somehow. But I did a little bit of research online. I think I got it figured out. So I'm just gonna quickly assemble just this part here. 2 springs and this piece first. And then we're going to see if I can get it to fit underneath the transmission. All right, so this appears that it only goes on one way. Now you can see right there, there's little rub marks. So this it definitely fits on the back side of that. And then the spring, oh, we're going to lose it. Sorry. Spring fits up right along the side right here, just perfect. So it kind of holds itself in. So, I don't know. Seems to fit there pretty good. I can't really see any other way it goes. The shape of that spring, that little kink in it, and the little foot shape, is the exact shape as the side of this foot peg or this little bracket. So I'm assuming that's what holds it in there and stops it from spinning and keeps it in place. So I'm going to take it. I'm going to try trial and error. We're going to throw it together. I'm just not going to crank it down really tight. I don't want to crush my gasket until I know where it's going to be. But we'll hook up the cable to it and we'll play around a little bit to see if it's going to stay in place. All right. Actually, I think I figured it out. It's a little bit more of a chore to get in there. But see this hole right there at the top where the spring comes through? Well, you know what? There's no way this thing can fall out of there anymore. And it was a bugger. I thought I was going to break it putting it in there. But you know what? It having a little bend in it makes sense from when I pulled it out, why it would have bent that wire. So that's this is probably a better idea of where it goes in. So I'm going to give that a try. If I have to pull this out, I'm not quite sure what I'll do because it did put quite a strain on that spring, and I'm worried if I do that too many times, it's going to break it. But I'm able to bend this down a little bit without it falling out, so I can slip it into the hole there, end up getting the cable attached, and we'll see if it works. Alright, so we got the body on, and I just got my screws set in there, and I shoved the cable in. Now, I've been playing with it here a bit. I have had a little bit of issue. There definitely is adjustment here. This, I did bottom this out all the way in, thinking that's the way it was supposed to be, but it was not allowing the brake to totally disengage. So I'm hooked up to my lever here now. So I am in the drive position where you would drive. And it turns nice and free. I can spin that transmission. Of course, it's always hard to turn one way than the other because you're going against or the tightening of the bands, but everything is working good there. And then when I come down here, I can put this in. Now, you see it's kind of bouncing out. That's because of that spring that's in there. That's the tension. And I'm missing a spring here. There's a little spring that goes on here that holds it up. The center position of the spring would technically be right there. When you push it up, it cams over and holds this lever in the up position. When you go the other way, it cams the other side, holding this lever down when I'm in between sprags because it's too much tension. Right now, I'm against the end of the knuckle. So if I move this a little bit, you hear a little click. Now I'm in a spot where I can put it in lock. and it stays. I'm not against that tension spring. So now that I'm in, that's it. Transmission is locked. Pull that back like I was going to be driving. And there we go. She is fixed. She is working mighty fine. Man, it feels real nice having this thing come together. And just having those three controls on, the main controls, speedometer, of course our parking brake now, and our gear shifter. Now, I got my hose made up. I took it to work, got it all crimped. Now all we gotta do is just snug it on. It should be a perfect fit here. There we go. Now again, this is GIC, and it is tapered fit, so you don't need to crank these on. Just gonna give them a nice little snug, little ugh. And we'll double check it once we start running this thing. It's leaking a bit. We can definitely snug it up a little more, but they definitely don't require them to be torqued right on, like super tight. Get in the right spot. There we go. That is perfect. And get my linkage to move there, just in the right spot. So there we go. Another part done. Now one thing I got to do, the bolts that I have here holding that housing on, they're only snugged in. But the ones that were in it were all grody and crusty. So I have these ones laying around. But they're about 1/4 inch too short because I still need to put a lock washer on there to make sure they seat in, they're fine. And they're really only grabbing in about 1 or 2 threads. So I'll pick some of those up tomorrow. It is a nighttime here. Pick some of those up tomorrow. Get them put in. Put them in permanently now. Gotta find the torque setting on those. I'm sure it's an inch-pound on that one. But find the torque setting because I'm confident that I'm in the right spot. If I do need to do some fine adjustment as I pull those cables into the cab, that's the adjustment right there now that I know. I didn't realize that's what that was, but that is the adjustment for it. So, I'm just going to leave this stuff tucked away under there, and that's it. So I guess we'll start putting on some more things. Going to pull the alternator back out, get the alternator on, and then we'll get the power steering pump put back in. Alright, so I got the power steering pump, the alternator back on here, snugged up. But not operational yet, of course. And I got all my cables up here. Disconnecting my push button shift. We got our shift linkage. And we also got our park brake and our speedometer cable up in the air. Because I am going to fill the transmission with fluid. So, got about 10 liters of fluid over there. Book says it takes about 9.5. But we're definitely not going to get near that. 9.5 would be with my lines going up to the cooler reservoir itself, and the torque converter completely filled. What I'm doing here is I'm going to fill the transmission to the level of dipstick. I got to be careful that I'm not going to be coming up like all the way up to the dipstick. Theoretically, full with it running is only around here, probably to the top of the solenoid, and that's where the stick kind of fits down in here. So I'm going to fill it up. I'll keep checking it because I'm not really running it, but I'll keep checking it to make sure I'm not getting too high with my oil. I want to keep the fluid right around here, and that'll make it so that at this level, as you can see, basically this line of the transmission, that'll cause it to fill into the tail shaft of the transmission as well. There is 2 openings, 2 holes down here. I want to make sure that oil gets back here because my biggest thing is I want to know if anything of this leaks. We have so many connections. We have for the dipstick tube, we have the pan itself. We have all these other connections as well. The park brake, which I got new bolts. Bolts are in and torqued down. And of course, we got our rear seal. Over on this side, we have the connection for the speedometer and also for the shifter and the kickdown. I want to get my level of oil up in there to see if everything's good. And I'll slowly turn the tail of the transmission around both ways. Remember, there's dual pumps in here. As long as that shaft is turning, the rear pump is pumping and putting pressure into the torque converter. All right, so I got almost 6 liters in there. I used the 3/4 liter, that a little better than 3/4 liter that was in that 1 liter that I used for lubing everything up. If I pull the stick out, there's the transmission level up way up there, and there's my full line down there. So that puts the level right around here, which is above where I needed it to be. So theoretically, the transmission is full right up to this point here and halfway down that tail shaft. So the oil should be all the way down there. I have no drips yet. That kind of puts it as well, because everything is linear through here. That puts it halfway above the main input shaft seal from the torque converter, and there is no leak at all coming out of the weep. Nothing around my pipe. So everything else seems okay. I don't see any drips or anything. We're getting ready to turn her over here as well too. But before I do that, like I said, I'm going to throw a strong arm ratchet on the end here and turn this transmission over a bit. So remember, this would be basically the drive shaft coming out of the transmission, so it doesn't matter which way I go. And there is that secondary pump back here working both ways. So I'm just going to keep turning this around. Everything seems smooth. Just see if we can get a little bit of that oil, up around the gears, moving as much as we can. Not everything is going to turn, of course, because the torque converter is not pressurized. Everything sounds good. Do this for a few minutes. We'll check the level on that dipstick. All right, that was a good workout. And I had checked the stick, and you can see we are down a bit. So it has moved some of the oil through. One, it's started coating gears and whatnot, maybe working a little bit more towards the back. And it's also, the pump on the back has started pushing some fluid through. Whew. I probably turned that for about 10 minutes just to make sure. But no leaks so far. Now, I'm going to crank her over on the engine side. Now no big deals here. I know we're building good oil pressure, so hopefully we'll get a little more up in here. I can see where it's run down, not dry, but you can tell it's not puddled in there. So I'll get a strong arm and a bar. We'll start cranking that engine over as well. So, by turning the engine on this side, a couple things I'm achieving here. One, I'm now turning the torque converter, the main side of the torque converter. That is bolted to the flex plate, which is directly bolted to the engine. So that's my first thing. The other thing I'm doing as well, get this turned over a bunch of times. We're getting some oil pumped back into her from the oil pump. Yeah, the drive is in there. That intermediate shaft that rides off the cam. So I should be able to see inside the distributor hole that new oil is getting up there. And then the third thing in doing all this, I know that there's going to be no interference between valves and pistons. Because as you saw there, I have my battery hooked up. I'm going to crank it over with the battery, which is going to be far faster than I can do it by hand. And also, I'm going to see if that starter's any good. All right, so for checking this again, we're not down much. It has moved a little. I didn't expect it to move too much. That pump, it needs to spin a lot faster when I'm turning it by hand. It might even need to spin faster than what the starter does. But we are hooked up, and now it's time to see what that starter's going to do. All right. All right, everything looks good. Let's see what happens here. Put some juice to this and see what our old starter can do. Man, I can smell it. Ooh, oh yeah. Oh man, is she getting hot. Not ideal. Not ideal at all. I don't know if it's picking up in the video or not, but that starter is laboring hard and is not turning very fast. I can see my piston right in here through the spark plug hole, and I can count as it's going. It's not moving very quick. And the end of this thing, man, she's cooking, and I can smell it. But it turned over okay. It did do it, but it's definitely not sufficient. She's tired. So next step on this, I'm gonna see if I can pull that apart myself and clean it up. Can't be that hard, I wouldn't think. All right, so we have no drips over on the 361 so far. Not under heat, not under load, but at least sitting there filled with fluid. She's not leaking. So I pulled out the starter here, and we're gonna see what's going on. We're gonna see what makes this thing tick, and hopefully we can make it tick a little quicker, because it's turning way too slow and way underpowered. And rather than just throwing a new one in, which would be easy, but it's money to do that, and you never know. Maybe it's just dirty in here. Maybe there's a bunch of cobwebs. Maybe ants have made a home in there. I don't know. There could be something going on, something simple. So all there is really is a couple bolts in the back here. There's 4 of these slotted screws on the side of the motor housing. I'm not really sure what they do. We'll figure that out. And then everything else is internal. The solenoid and everything's all encapsulated in this end drive. And obviously there's our gear reduction drive in here. You can see the center line of the motor is different than the center line of the Bendix, so there is some kind of a reduction in there that we cannot see. Might be behind this cover. But you know what? We're going to figure it when we get there. There's also a cotter pin here that goes all the way through. Seems kind of odd, but it's obviously holding something together. We're going to find out. Let's pull off a couple bolts off the back of this thing. Well, with that inspection cover off, we can see the reduction gear drive down in there. Also the keeper for the Bendix for the drive shaft, the bearing, return spring, and the drive itself. And obviously, yeah, there's a bearing here out on the end. So other than being dirty, like really dirty, it's still quite greasy. And nothing rusty in there, but just a lot of grit and grime. Definitely needs to be cleaned up. So we'll pull the bolts off the back cover here and see what's going on there. So we got the 2 bolts out. Oh, what a mess. Oh, you can see the water line where this thing sat in the mud. It was half that transmission was under the dirt, and you can see the line right across here. And man, is it dirty inside and rusty inside here. Now the bushing, it looks fine in there. It looks good, but she's dry. She's really dry, and there's a lot of crud in there. So definitely needs to be cleaned up. Something stomping it there. Oh, it might be just the dirt. Something stopping her. Oh, there it goes. Ah, I can see what's stopping her now. Got a couple cables attached to her. Just give me a second to see if I can get that undone. Man, that sun is glaring bad, but armature, end plates off, armature's out. The one set of brushes that's screwed to the magnet side. These are the 4 springs that hold those brushes against the armature here. But I had to move over here to my workbench. One for the glare, but also there's one wire here. It was wrapped all the way. It was wrapped around this probably 3 times. It was quite long in the end. It was soldered on there, so I had to use the old soldering iron and get her off. But this last brush, actually 2 brushes, it looks like it's part of the solenoid. Now you can see a seam here, and it comes across right through and then up inside here. It looks like this is some kind of cap or some kind of part that comes off. I wiggled on it a bit, but it's not moving. I'm gonna try a little bit more to get her off, but man, is it dirty in there. Either way, this thing was not viable to use again. Can I get it going? I don't know. I don't even know if it's worth saving, but you know what? I got a day of doing nothing, so I might as well have fun and learn something new. Let's kind of interesting. Never seen a side of a solenoid before. There's a lot more going on here than I thought. But she's dirty. There's one little screw right up here on the top. And that spot where you saw where the seam was, that is all the one piece that all comes out. Now there is something attached here. I'll set this down, play with it a little bit. Get some of the parts off that look like they're going to fall off so I know where they go before they just drop to the floor. Here we got something going on. Something that doesn't want to come out. Bear in mind, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what any of these parts are. That does not want to come out. What is that? Oh, something falling out. Big washer. Goes there. Oh, you got something else falling out. Another piece. Let's keep these in order to how they come apart. And that's it. Oh, wait a minute. What's going on? Oh. Okay. I'm learning here as I go. So there's the Bendix that comes out. That somehow is attached to that cylinder. I don't know if you can see it down inside there. There it is. Somehow attached to that. All right, we're gonna keep going here. I'm gonna shut the camera off. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm gonna see what I can pull apart. All right, we're into a mess here, I tell you. I've got it apart. Now, this is something else. There are a lot of things fell apart as I was doing this as well. But I have pulled it all out, and it's an absolute mess. Like, just look inside there, the rust and the corrosion, the dirt, the wear. Oh, like the brushes are so scored up. I don't know if this is even worth saving. But you know what? Like I said, I have time today. We're going to try it and see if I can save it. The coil here in the solenoid, this is going to be my biggest issue. Where it connects to the main, I guess, contact point, it is chewed right through. Can you see that? Man, it's got a huge gouge taken out of it, but it's bolted in there. I'm hoping I can pull that out and turn that around to the good side. Then on this side, where it's all chewed up, it's not really thinner, but it's all pitted. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to pull this apart, take that out, and I'll get it on a piece of sandpaper on a flat metal surface and work it a little bit. Maybe start around 200, then go to 300, 500, 1,000 if I have to. Just to polish that surface off to get a nice, clean, smooth surface so it has full contact in there while it's spinning. Now, I don't know what of these components you can buy separately, or if you can get any of it separately. You probably just buy a new starter, I would think would be the easiest thing. But the brushes, this side here, the brushes, these two brushes, are part of this cap. The small nub at the top there, that is a rivet that's down on that side, punched on there. It's mushroomed right out, and it's quite thin. There's not enough left that I could take that off and clean it. So if I can't get these brushes smooth, the surface, where it looks like they might make better contact, I'm probably pretty much done. Because I'm assuming buying one little piece like this, you might as well just replace a starter. But like I said, again, third time, I got nothing but time today. Just myself hanging out. But things are so dirty and so corroded. I'm sure this is the only issue. All the components seem to work, right? Motor spins, the Bendix throws out, so the solenoid's working. I'm running the power through the solenoid. I think it's such bad corrosion, worn contact, that it's not getting that full juice going through her. And we lube it up, throw it together, if that's possible. It's quite a puzzle. We'll see what happens. So, let's get some things cleaned. Well, that was most definitely a long afternoon of cleaning. And having some Coronas. But just not your average Corona. Had a buddy give me some 710 milliliter Coronas. Nothing like Corona the size of a wine bottle, I tell you. But I got a lot done. I got a lot done. Everything completely disassembled. Doesn't look like anything broke. And everything is cleaned. Look at that housing. Got that cleaned and polished out the best I could. The windings, or not the windings, but that magnet. That was something to clean. Now they do come apart. I guess at some point I cannot get those off. We left well enough alone. But I've gone through, just assembled everything. Got my solenoid completely taken apart as well too. That was interesting. Got a little tiny piece here that broke off the corner, but that's okay. It's not really required. It doesn't even really touch, but just so it'll be fine. And then of course that cap, the main cap that holds all the brushes and all the wires, I got that clean as well too. But it chewed up all the time I have for this video. Next video, she's gonna be going together. Probably do a time lapse or something, I'm not sure. Or you know what, I might just show a couple pieces here and there together and see how it goes. It's gonna take a while, it's gonna be tedious, and it's gonna be hard to get any good shots on it. But anyway, as always, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for subscribing. If it's your first time coming through, why don't you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We can both learn something along the way. Catch you guys again later.